Now, if you can't tell, I like masks. They're interesting, both on an aesthetic level and in symbolic ways. And throughout time, there have been some creepy masks made. So, here's my top 10 creepiest historical masks of all time. In 1663, a Presbyterian minister by the name of Alexander Peden was on the run from the Scottish government. This minister refused to quit preaching the word of God when King Charles II abolished Presbyterianism and changed the country's religion. All bishops had to be approved by the government. Instead of following orders, he stood by his faith and would preach his word to anyone who would listen. This was pretty much an act of treason, and Alexander soon found himself to be the most wanted man in all of Scotland. But he didn't stop. Instead, he would wear a mask as he preached. His mask consisted of a red beard, a wig and wooden teeth. The rest of his face was covered in fabric, and his eyelashes were made of feathers. So, despite him being a holy man, his mask made him look a bit demonic. And what's even more strange is that it actually worked in fooling the government officials, at least for a little while. He was soon caught and exiled to America after 10 years of prison. Madame Rowley's toilet mask was a late 1800s beauty treatment. It promised to preserve the complexion and beautify the wearer. Madame Rowley honestly believed that there was real science behind her Hannibal Lecter's look-alike mask, so much that she had the mask patented. This mask was worn while the person slept, and their perspiration would soften and clarify the skin. If anyone has ever slept with a band-aid on their finger before, they know the only thing that happens is your finger gets all pruny and maybe smells a bit funny. The things women did for beauty in the past. Before the time of Madame Rowley's mask, there was a different mask women would wear to preserve their beauty and complexion. In the 16th century, it was almost the norm to see every woman with a creepy and off-putting black velvet mask covering their entire face. This velvet mask was called Vizards. It would keep their skin from seeing those harmful UV sun rays, as well as give an air of mystery. Around the mouth, there would be a small bead that women would bite down on to hold the mask in place. This effectively kept the woman mute, seen and not heard. This poor fashion choice fell out of style when it became known that prostitutes wore them during their business hours. There's something about gas masks that are just plain creepy. But adult gas masks are nothing compared to the baby gas masks. That's right, there is a baby version of them, made and worn during the World Wars. These baby gas masks look more like a helmet than the now commonly seen gas masks. For this mask to work, an adult had to continually push a manual air pump to keep the airflow for the child. This seems like it would be extremely difficult to do during an emergency. And if these weren't scary looking enough, even the family dog had a gas mask just for them. Dirt Eater Mask. Between the 16th and 19th century, slaves were fitted with a metal mask, almost like a muzzle that blocked anything from entering it. During this time, it was very common for slaves to have geophagy, which basically means dirt eating. This is a common thing with birds and other animals. Slave owners were told by physicians that this was extremely unhealthy and that it could give their slaves depression, vertigo, shortness of breath, and other ailments, because none of that would be caused by their poor working conditions, obviously. Slave owners would fasten these metal masks on their slaves to keep them healthy, but also so that the slaves couldn't eat the crops they were being forced to work on. Today's Halloween masks are meant to scare anyone who looks at them. They have sharp-looking teeth, very disturbing proportions or facial features, clowns, vampires, werewolves, You name it, and there are scary Halloween masks of it. But going back 100 years, back when latex and rubber weren't used to make masks, you'll find even more horrifying masks. These non-mass produced masks were made out of fabric and paper mache. They were asymmetrical, coloured oddly, and even the cute masks were handmade and had a rather uncanny air to them. This could also be because then, Halloween was meant to be frightening, as to ward and confuse the wandering spirits. Mask of Shame. While this mask wasn't meant to be scary, the appearance is still a bit off-putting. These shame masks were used as a form of punishment during the 17th and 18th century in Germany. What was the crime, you ask? Breaking social rules. If you were caught gossiping, telling dirty jokes, or even lying, you were made to wear this animal-esque mask. It was made of metal and, depending on what crime you had committed, would dictate what animal you were made to represent. Donkey ears were to show that you were being foolish, long tongues were to show that you spread rumours and gossiped too much, and a pig snout meant to show that you were dirty and promiscuous. Splatter masks. During World War I, these masks were worn not for torture, but for protection. These masks were worn by British tank operators. Back then, tank engineering was not the best. They were sloppily put together and could easily be penetrated or malfunction. Tanks could only move as fast as someone walking. They broke down almost constantly and could be easily pierced. So, if a tank was being showered with bullets, anyone inside the tank could be hit by bullets, shrapnel, or even bits of lead paint. The chainmail and leather served as the last line of defense for the wearer's face. Though, at first glance, the tanks and tank operator looked rather intimidating and worked in their favour against German soldiers. Iroquois Falseface Society Mask. Almost any culture you look at will have some sort of ritual or religious mask. And when you look at them from the outside world, they can look terrifying and yet rather fascinating. However, the masks worn by the Falseface Society is one of the more intimidating ones seen today. Their masks are purposely made to look intimidating and grotesque. Why, you ask? Well, this medical group is where you go to when there is no other option, when no other medical practices will work. These masks they wear are supposed to be the living embodiment of spirits, and you would treat it as such. You would bathe it and anoint it with oil and animal grease, and would feed it white corn. Burning tobacco in their honour is also a common practice. During their practice and actual use, healers will wear the masks and perform pantomimes of demons being expelled out of the patient's body. Death masks. Death masks are exactly what you think they are. Masks of the dead. For some reason or another, it has been seen throughout all of our history of trying to preserve the physical look of someone after they have died. More often than not, we would encase the dead, usually only the head, in plaster to capture their now lifeless face. Their purposes aren't for one simple thing. Many people have used them for religious purposes, mementos, forensic reasons, and some even use them for modelling. The making of a death mask would be done within the first few hours of an individual's death. This was to prevent making a disfigured mask due to rigor mortis or bloating. Because of these practices, we can see what exactly Napoleon, President Lincoln, Marie Antoinette, and many other historical figures had looked like during their lifetime. It's almost as if they could be standing right in front of us. Anyway, I hope you liked this week's roundup, and if you did, leave a like. And if you want to see another disturbing top 10, click here for my top 10 disturbing abandoned asylums and hospitals. And if you want to see more in the future, subscribe. I try to put these out every week.